Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're lacing up our virtual mountaineering boots. We're tackling a list that, well, it might just change how you think about dangerous peaks. We've got the 10 most dangerous mountains in the world, according to 10mosttoday.com, right here. Now, if you're like me, the name Everest probably just, popped into your head.
And that's a natural association, right? Everest looms so large in our collective imagination about mountains. But what's immediately interesting about this list is that it challenges that very assumption.
Yeah.
Height isn't always the defining factor when it comes to danger, and this deep dive is, well, it's all about understanding why.
Exactly. Our mission isn't just to, tick off 10 mountains. We want to really get under the skin of each one. Exploring the fatality rates, those truly gripping, sometimes tragic stories, and the unique set of challenges that make these summits so perilous. We want to understand the why behind the danger.
Right, the context.
So let's dive right in. Starting with the giant itself, Mount Everest. Straddling Nepal and China, and of course, scraping the sky at over 29,000 feet.
Right, Everest. The bucket list mountain for so many. And the article, well, it makes a fascinating point. Despite its iconic status and the sheer number of climbers who attempt it, the fatality rate is surprisingly moderate. Since the year 2000, it's around 1.4 fatalities for every 100 successful summits.
Wow. That is surprising when you think about the extreme altitude and the inherent risks of being that high up.
Yeah.
It almost suggests that the established infrastructure, the well-trodden routes, and maybe the sheer number of experienced guides might, ironically, contribute to a slightly lower relative risk compared to some other behemoths.
Which perfectly sets the stage for our number 2. K2. Perched on the border between Pakistan and China, it's the world's second highest mountain, but many seasoned climbers consider its reputation for danger even more intense than Everest's.
Oh, really?
Particularly when we look at the historical experiences of female climbers.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is a chapter that's both intriguing and a little unsettling. The article discusses what became known as a kind of curse associated with women climbing K2. Wanda Rutkiewicz, a pioneering Polish mountaineer, she was the first woman to summit back in 1986. But then, over the next 18 years, 5 women who reached the top tragically died.
Wow.
3 on their way down and 2 on nearby peaks.
And the article even reminds us that Rutkiewicz herself later perished near Kanchenjunga in 1992. So this string of tragedies really solidified this narrative, this idea that K2 held a particular danger for women.
Right.
What's interesting is the subsequent shift Adern Pasaban of Spain. She survived her summit in 2004, and then Vanessa O'Brien became the first American woman to reach the top in 2017. It's almost as if that perceived curse was, finally broken.
It does feel that way.
Yeah.
But beyond this fascinating, albeit likely, superstitious narrative, K2 presents very real and tangible dangers. The article spells out the brutal realities. A long and incredibly remote trek just to reach base camp, making the entire expedition a massive logistical undertaking. Plus, it's infamous for sudden and unpredictable avalanches and just ferociously bad weather. That 10% fatality rate for those who even attempt it, that really underscores just how unforgiving.
How unforgiving K2 can be. Absolutely. It's a peak that demands absolute respect and offers virtually no margin for error.
Right.
Now, shifting our focus to number 3, we have Kanchenjunga, straddling the border of India and Nepal and holding the title in the world's 3rd highest mountain.
Kanchenjunga. Now, here's a surprising connection to this formidable peak, right? It actually played a role in a James Bond novel back in 1999.
No way!
Yeah, with 007 apparently engaging in some dramatic high-altitude escapades on its slopes. But fiction aside, this mountain is, profoundly dangerous, primarily due to the intense cold and, as we've heard before, the ever-present threat of avalanches.
And while over 200 climbers have successfully reached Kanchenjunga's summit, the fatality rate remains significant. The article references figures from around 2010 suggesting it could be as high as 20%.
20%, wow.
This really emphasizes that while Everest might be taller, other factors contribute to making Kanchenjunga statistically more deadly.
Definitely. Moving to number 4, we encounter Nanga Parbat, situated in Pakistan. This one doesn't mince words with its nicknames. Killer monster of Pakistan.
Oof.
And when you look at its sheer scale and features, you start to understand why. It boasts massive ice and rock ridges, and that That awe-inspiring RuPaul face, often described as the world's highest mountain face on Earth, rising a staggering 15,090 feet from its base.
Good grief.
That's almost hard to even visualize.
It truly is a monumental feature. And the article provides some really interesting historical context here. Back in the 1930s, with British mountaineers largely focused on Everest, German expeditions turned their attention to Nanga Parbat. They viewed it, perhaps somewhat optimistically, as the tallest mountain fairly climbable at the time.
Fairly climbable, a very relative term in this context. It wasn't until 1953 that Hermann Buhl finally achieved the first successful ascent, but tragically, 31 lives were lost in earlier attempts.
31? Wow.
That historical toll alone speaks volumes about the immense challenges Nanga Parbat presents.
Let's now turn our attention to number 5, Annapurna, located in central Nepal. While it's the 10th highest mountain in the world, the statistics surrounding it are, well, they're stark.
Stark is the word. Approximately 191 successful ascents have been recorded, but a truly sobering 63 lives have been lost.
63.
That translates to a shocking fatality rate of around 33%.
33%.
The article highlights that this is the highest fatality rate among all the 8,000-meter peaks. It's almost a paradox. It was the first 8,000-meter peak ever summited, yet it remains statistically the most deadly.
And the dangers aren't limited to just the high-altitude climbing, right? The region around Annapurna is also a popular trekking destination, but it has been the site of some devastating weather-related disasters.
Yeah, I remember reading about that.
The article specifically mentions the 2014 avalanche, triggered by a sudden and intense snowstorm that dumped like 6 feet of snow in just 12 hours.
6 feet in 12 hours, yeah.
Tragically, 43 people lost their lives, and over 500 required rescue. It's a stark illustration of how quickly conditions can turn deadly in these environments, even at lower altitudes.
Absolutely. Now, for something a little different, at number 6, we have Silla Grande, tucked away in the Huayhuash range of the Peruvian Andes.
Yeah.
This peak might not be as globally recognized as some of the others, but it's famous for a truly extraordinary and, frankly, harrowing story.
Yes, the 1985 ascent of the West Face by Simon Yates and Joe Simpson, a climb that was later immortalized in the gripping book and film Touching the Void.
Such a powerful story.
It really is. The article rightly points out that their route up the sheer West Face was incredibly steep and has never been successfully repeated.
And their descent? Well, it was the stuff of nightmares.
Yeah.
Joe Simpson fell, suffered a broken leg. In a truly agonizing and pivotal moment, Simon Yates, believing Joe had fallen to his death down a crevasse, had to make the impossible decision to cut the rope connecting them.
Unbelievable pressure.
But the unbelievable part of the story is that Joe somehow survived a 100-foot fall into the crevasse, endured 3 days alone on melted snow, and then, against all odds, crawled and hopped 5 miles back to their base camp.
Just incredible resilience. It's almost unbelievable.
It really is, a testament to human will.
What's particularly striking about Silla Grande is how a mountain significantly lower than the 8,000-meter giants can still present such extreme dangers. Due to its incredibly steep faces and unpredictable conditions, leading to such a dramatic and near-fatal event.
Right. Moving significantly north now, to number 7, we have Denali, the towering giant of North America, located in Alaska. The article emphasizes a couple of unique challenges that climbers face on this peak.
That's right. Denali is often described as the most prominent and isolated mountain on Earth. One of the major hurdles for climbers is the sheer duration of an expedition, often requiring 2 to 4 weeks on the mountain.
2 to 4 weeks.
Wow. And even with that significant time commitment, only about half of those who attempt to summit each year are actually successful.
And plus, Denali presents some specific dangers tied to its geographical location, right? It's located in an active seismic zone, making it susceptible to earthquakes.
Yeah, that adds another layer.
And perhaps more surprisingly, due to its high latitude combined with its extreme altitude, climbers face a much greater risk of rapid altitude sickness. The article explains that the partial pressure of oxygen at Denali summit is significantly lower than on a mountain of similar height located closer to the equator.
That's fascinating.
That's a critical physiological factor that many might not fully appreciate.
It really underscores that when we talk about the challenges of high altitude, it's not just about the number of feet above sea level. Latitude plays a crucial role in the atmospheric conditions and the physiological stresses on the human body.
Makes sense.
Now, let's journey back across the Atlantic to number 8, Mont Blanc, the highest peak in the Alps, situated in France.
Mont Blanc holds a significant place in mountaineering history, doesn't it? Yeah. Being the first major mountain to be successfully ascended all the way back in 1786.
Yeah, the very beginning.
That climb by Michel Picard and Jacques Balmat is widely considered the dawn of modern mountaineering. But despite its historical importance and its relatively moderate height compared to some of the others on this list, it's surprisingly and consistently deadly.
Indeed. The article highlights Mont Blanc's immense popularity, over 20,000 climbers attempting its summit every year.
20,000.
And with that sheer volume of people, the inherent dangers of avalanches and falling rocks become significantly amplified. Rescue services in the region average a staggering 12 interventions per weekend during peak season.
12 per weekend.
Yeah. And the estimated fatality rate in the European Alps is around 100 lives per year, with Mont Blanc being a major contributor to that figure.
What's counterintuitive here, and the article mentions the Atlantic suggesting this, is that the primary danger on Mont Blanc isn't necessarily extreme technical climbing, but rather the long walk.
Interesting.
It seems the relative accessibility, and perhaps a perception that it's less extreme, might lead to more unprepared climbers encountering serious and ultimately fatal situations due to weather or terrain.
That's a really important insight. Sometimes the mountains that appear more approachable can lull individuals into a false sense of security. And the sheer number of people on the popular routes can inadvertently create additional hazards, like increased rockfall. Which brings us to number 9. The instantly recognizable Matterhorn, straddling the border between Switzerland and Italy.
The Matterhorn. Its iconic pyramid shape is world famous, isn't it? And its first ascent in 1865 really cemented its legendary status in mountaineering and spurred a great deal of development in the surrounding area.
For sure. But similar to Mont Blanc, its very popularity in the modern era has become a significant contributing factor to its danger.
Right, the over-tourism effect again.
Exactly. The article emphasizes that over-tourism and a growing number of inexperienced hikers attempting the climb are causing an increase in loose rocks falling, posing a serious threat to climbers below.
That makes sense. More traffic, more erosion.
And adding to the risk, afternoon storms are quite common during the peak summer summit season, introducing another layer of unpredictability to an already challenging climb. With an average of around 12 deaths per year and over 500 recorded since its first ascent, well, the Matterhorn's striking beauty clearly comes with a significant level of risk.
Definitely. Finally, landing at number 10, we have a mountain that might come as a complete surprise to many. Mount Washington, located in New Hampshire.
Yeah, this one's interesting.
At just under 6,300 feet, it's dwarfed in altitude by all the other peaks on this list, but it earns its place for some very compelling reasons.
Absolutely. Mount Washington serves as a powerful reminder that extreme altitude isn't a prerequisite for encountering deadly mountain conditions. The article highlights its infamous hurricane-force winds.
Hurricane force.
The incredibly rapid and often dramatic shifts in weather, and the constant bombardment of ice pellets that can make its slopes treacherous. Over 100 lives have been tragically lost on this seemingly modest peak.
Over 100. On a peak under 7,000 feet. That's wild. The extremes recorded on Mount Washington are just astonishing. Summit temperatures have been known to plummet to a bone-chilling -50 degrees Fahrenheit.
-50.
And it holds the world record for the strongest wind speed ever directly measured on the Earth's surface, a mind-blowing 231 miles per hour.
231 miles per hour? That's hard to even comprehend.
It really is. It's a stark illustration that localized weather phenomena can make even relatively accessible mountains incredibly dangerous.
So, as we reflect on this diverse list of dangerous mountains, what overarching themes or, surprising insights stand out to you?
Well, for me, I think the biggest takeaway is the sheer complexity of what makes a mountain dangerous. It's so much more than just how high it is, right?
Totally.
We've seen how factors like unpredictable and localized weather, the remoteness of the location, objective hazards, things like avalanches, rockfall, crevasses, that are just inherent to the environment, and even the impact of human activity, both in terms of experience levels and just the sheer numbers of climbers, all play critical roles in determining a peak's deadliness.
And it's full of counterintuitive data, isn't it? The fact that Everest, the undisputed king in terms of altitude, has a comparatively lower fatality rate than Annapurna? That's a real eye-opener.
Yeah, that 33% on Annapurna is just shocking.
And the unexpected dangers lurking on seemingly more accessible peaks like Mont Blanc and Mount Washington really make you reconsider how we perceive risk in mountainous environments.
Definitely. It really makes you think about how our initial understanding of risk is often shaped by the most obvious factors, like extreme height or dramatic imagery, when the reality can be a much more intricate interplay of environmental conditions, human behavior, and even the mountain's history and reputation.
Right, it's never just one thing.
So as you've listened to this deep dive, consider what this list tells you about how we tend to evaluate challenges, not just in the realm of mountaineering, but perhaps in other areas of life as well.
Hmm. Good point.
This exploration of these perilous peaks offers, I think, a powerful reminder of the raw and untamed power of nature, and the very real risks faced by those who dare to venture into its most extreme and unforgiving corners.